everyone. This is David Stark from WatcherPass.com, your website for movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Today I'm joined by Brendan Walsh, the director, producer, and co-writer, and Bradley J. Ross, the producer of the all-new ice-cold thriller Centigrade. We're going to talk to Brendan and Bradley in just a second, but first let's check out the trailer.
I think we're snowed under.
How's she doing?
She keeps on kicking. She's okay.
Any ideas how we're getting out of here?
I don't think we should get out of here.
It's not really much of a plan. We're gonna freeze in here.
And you don't think we're gonna freeze out there? And we have light. I just need you to trust me, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Hi, Bradley.
Hello, how are you? Sorry.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I had to dig deep in emails. Sorry. Here I am.
The life of a promoter right now, right?
There you go.
Also, thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. I know we have limited time, so I'll just get started. Right into the questions. So we're talking about Centigrade. It's a new ice cold thriller from IFC Midnight. It's in theaters and digital and on demand. So you can check it out right now. Or you can go to drive-in theater if you want. In your car, you might want to bring lots of supplies just in case. But I know this is based on a true story. I'm just wondering, Brendan, how did you find this story? Did you hear about it when it happened, or is this something you kind of stumbled upon when you were Googling like everyone's worst nightmare?
You know, what's funny is that it actually is inspired by true events, but everyone keeps just turning that into based on a true story. The script was something that was originally written by Daley Nixon, was the other writer in the film, and it basically was an amalgamation of many different stories. The strongest one of them was a Swedish man who was stuck in his car for 2 months. His name was like Peter Skullgard. And, the more you start looking into it, the more these stories, you find everywhere. As I read the original script, I went and started Googling, the story, and that was one of the only ones I found. And then there was a lot of other stories of, there was a grandmother that was caught in her car for 5 days who almost had to eat cat food. There was a couple in 1989. There was a famous story that was caught with their child for I think a week or a few days, and then one of them had to go out and trek to try to find help. There was just so many of these stories that kept popping up, and what we did was kind of take the truths of all of them and kind of melt them into what you see in Centigrade.
Got it. Well, I think you did a good job, because I definitely felt like it was based on a true story. So I'll update my language. I think one thing that was really interesting about this film is that it's all filmed for the most part in a car. So I'm just really curious how you went about doing that. Did you just have like really limber cameramen? Did you kind of create like a cutout car that you could go back and forth in? Because it looked contained, the lighting was really good. It kind of felt like you were buried in there. So how did you kind of go about performing that?
So when we the first thing we did was we got 2 cars. We cut one of them up to kind of operate, it's a very low budget, so it wasn't like we could build a set. So we took a car and said, okay, we can get 2 of these matching cars. And we took them basically to mechanics and said, can you remove this part of the car or make it so that it can come off with a bolt? Can you make the doors come off very easily? Can you make the dashboard come out if we need to? And so we went to mechanics who are usually kind of fixing cars and putting them together, and said, like, what's an easy way that like this can just rest in, or we can secure in, so that we can kind of pull pieces on and off as we shot. And we had another car that we kind of cut the top out, which we would call like the tin can car. So we would basically literally, not from the edges on the outside, like right through the middle, like cut a big camera portal for most of the top portion of the car. And those were our two cars that we had, you know, as we progressed in the film, and as the film, you know, we shot everything sequentially. So, you know, we would be doing a scene, and if the actors, you know, I'd tell the actors, like, look, if you get mad or something and like this breaks, then it breaks. Like, we don't need to fix it. We don't need to go backwards. We don't need to, you know, have a double. Like, it breaks. So like, okay, that broke there. Okay, go to that car and break it on that car. So that every time we kept moving, like the cars would just keep kind of deteriorating. And we shot in a freezer. So that was the other, like, I forget the beginning of this question, but
yeah, like how did you go about shooting this?
That was the visuals, like, to making it look authentic was getting it in a freezer and having their breath be real and not something that we could fake.
There was one moment where I literally walked in the freezer and Brendan was holding a baseball bat and he was just breaking the windshield like he was waiting to do it all day long, all month long, because we were done with that scene. But to back into this answer, even in relation to your last question, I think like we got addicted to the real events, because once you started Googling this stuff, it was like, once you're aware of people getting trapped in their cars, it was astounding how frequently this was happening. And as filmmakers, I think Brendan's style as a director and my style as a producer editor is really leaning into the fact that truth is stranger than fiction. And so with the filmmaking process and shooting in the freezer, as Brendan was describing, the actors really being cold to perform in that way. But then beyond that, having the crew really being cold and everyone being miserable because it was 100 degrees. It was the heat wave of summer of 2018 in Staten Island, New York. And we were all like going in and out of this freezer. All of that misery fortunately found its way on screen, which was kind of what we were going for. So, you know, Brendan took on the challenge as a director and the crew and cast of really not relying on any visual effects. Like in the car, there were pretty much none other than like fixing some accidents, like the car breaking in certain parts. But all the breath is real, all the performance, everything's real. And so you get this, you know, really interesting movie that is purely authentic performance and authentic happenings of what it's like to be in a suffocated, cold circumstance. And Brendan, why don't you talk more about like the actors and the work they did to really lean into their characters in terms of diet and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the actors, you know, when we first approached the film, I explained that we wanted to, you know, I wanted them to safely diet. You know, I asked them to come in a little heavy and, you know, start a kind of regimented diet so that we could see a change in their face. So they were on a fairly strict diet that they put themselves on. And I also wanted to shoot 3 to 4 days a week. Usually you shoot 5 to 6 days a week on any set. I wanted to shoot 3 to 4 days a week because I wanted to let the time that they were in the car kind of take over. So they were in the car for 24 days. I wanted the filming schedule by the last day them to be on day 24. So his facial hair went from, you know, he was clean shaven in the first day, and by the last scene, you know, he has as much of a stubble as he would grow in 25 days. So there was no like beard prosthetics or any of that for it. And that was, you know, basically for them to kind of feel the hunger, the tired, and, you know, to kind of keep the authenticity and not put on, you know, I hate fake beards and I hate fake breath. So that's what I was going for, and hopefully, you know, it seems to have worked for everybody.
And they're also really expensive, you know, so yeah. It's an odd lesson in filmmaking. They look better and they're less expensive. Well, go figure, you know. So
I think we can all pretend like we've been in the car for at least 24 days.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I think that's a really smart way to do it, right? Because one of my biggest pet peeves is CG in film and how it kind of breaks your belief in the movie. And so this is a really good way to both get the breath, but then also the intangibles that you talked about. You see these actors who are doing these ticks that you would do when you're cold. They're not trying to pretend like it. They are actually cold and miserable. One question I was wondering is you've got these, essentially two main actors stuck in a car for, at this point, 24 days. How are they outside the car? Did they just leave and just go straight home and not want to talk to each other at all because they've been stuck there in the freezer for 3 or 4 days on end? Or how did that work
Well,
out?
I mean, no, but it's funny because there was no comfortable way. I mean, it really truly was kind of, it was one of these things we all walked in, we're like, yeah, two people in a car and a freezer, it's going to be great. It's going to be easy. And it was like one of the hardest things that any of us have done. The actors, there was a moment where they're just like, man, this is so hard. Like, we're in a freezer. You have to go in and out. You have so many layers of clothes on. Every time you get out of the freezer, you have to peel some off. Like, should I just stay in the freezer? Should I never leave the freezer till the end of the day? But they did, they had great spirits the whole time. Everybody could really feel the spirit. It was such a small, intimate crew. It allowed everybody to kind of, as miserable or as, the crew, like, we would shoot a scene and we'd be shooting, take after take. And then we'd be like, okay, great, let's move on to another shot. And then I remember the AD was like, how hard it is to get the crew back in this freezer to like continue to work, but even everybody had great spirits. It was just one of these things like, okay, put your jackets back on, let's go back in the freezer. Let's do, but it all worked out for, like Brad said, getting that misery to kind of transcend to everybody else.
That's a really smart way to do it. So I know we only have a couple more minutes, so I wanted to move on to, I call it the lightning round, just really short.
You're not rushing you don't have to rush for us. It's up to you,
Oh, I thought
I think they had something for us afterwards, but has been rescheduled. So if
Oh, well, there we go. Then I'll take a little more time then. So this is for Bradley more. So you mentioned that there were a lot of these stories that you read about, how common it was. I imagine you probably filmed a lot of extra aspects inspired by this. So, what was that editing process like? Did you have kind of a good story and kind of your main beat set, or did you kind of film a lot of stuff to kind of see what would work and then try to edit it down into one, story?
Well, I don't know if your eyes were on Brendan during that question because he's smiling. I mean, it's interesting because I actually I edit a lot of documentaries, so I'm used to killing a lot of babies, not literally, but that's our expression, I mean, one documentary had 800 hours of footage for a 90-minute movie. I think for a scripted feature like this in an independent film space, we really utilized pretty much every scene. We cut very little of this movie. I think the challenge in the edit room was because this movie was shot in order and everything's so sequential, we were, faced with I think it's a pretty traditional challenge of how can we break this and put it back together to find the best through line. So, we really had to divorce ourselves, and with such a small creative team, because it was, you're pretty much looking at the creative team in addition to our producers and our partners, Molly Connors and Amanda Bowers and Fife Pictures. We didn't have a lot of perspective. So we had to take breaks, and kind of step away from it. Sometimes we didn't, and we just got in a lot of arguments and wasted a lot of time because we lacked that perspective. So eventually, we sort of circled around and we actually ended up reordering quite a bit. And then something we always had sort of on the back plate was the exteriors, which was, at the end of the film, there is an exterior scene. I don't want to give anything away. And we always knew we were going to shoot that at a later date. Interesting enough, in the winter of, 2018, 2019, there was literally no snow in the world for the most part. I mean, we were thinking about going to South America in the summertime right after we were shooting principal photography. Very little snow, and we needed a lot of it. And when you see the movie, you'll see how much snow we found. There was very little snowfall all over the place. So we had to wait and wait and wait and wait. By the time there was snow, we like called Norway, because we always wanted to go to Norway. And they were in their period of time where it was like 20 hours of darkness. So they're like, you could come, but you have no light. And we're like, well, that's a problem. So finally, we were able to go, and we ended up going to Norway and found the perfect conditions for us. And along that period of time, we ended up shooting a couple more things to pursue some more ideas. Brendan, should we talk about the interview stuff at all?
I don't know. You just did.
Not really. Well, anyway, we have this very fun campaign we put together for marketing, because we also tried another fun idea. You know, we're all about kind of breaking conventional wisdom and how can we make the film on a storytelling level more relatable to the audience. And so we thought perhaps we could interview family members, fictional family members, and intercut it into the movie. And so we tapped into some of our connections in the industry and got some really interesting actors, high profile, like Kelsey Grammer, Isabella Rossellini, Ruben Blades, Louis Cancelmi, Judith Roberts, to play, we did some simple test shoots, which were like a half day each, and they gave us their time. And they played the roles of their parents, sisters, and Kelsey Grammer played the survival expert. And we ended up never putting it in the film because the actors delivered, Genesis and Vincent delivered such a strong performance that it really just never fit. But IFC, our distributor, really, we all love this material and we really wanted to see it live somewhere. So the days leading up to the premiere, Brendan and I wrote and edited and cut basically an homage kind of parody of an Unsolved Mysteries type thing that, I don't know if you saw it, David, but it exists out there.
I'm going to go back and watch it.
Yeah, so it's fantastic. Kind of this like Blair Witch Project style guerrilla campaign that's like a 4-minute video of as if this were an unsolved mystery. It's purely fiction of this couple that disappeared, and it's rather open-ended with all of that material. And then we also cut like 30-second teases with our partners at Zealot, which is a great trailer house. They cut together some viral content of Kelsey Grammer as a survival expert, augmented with the trailer. So we not only, cut just a couple scenes, maybe a couple minutes of content, but then all those interviews, things that we put into the mix, we utilize in the marketing process to let that live. So much to Brendan's vision, because he didn't like to see anything go along the wayside, which, editor director, that's always the argument that happens, right? We found a home for everything. And, this is something that Brendan deserves a lot of credit for. It was fun to find a home for everything because a lot of people, this was really, a passion project for everyone involved. And with great respect to those players, they all got, we all found a place for them. So it was fun from the edit room.
And very timely to release an Unsolved Mysteries parody, given that Unsolved Mysteries just came back on Netflix. So it's kind of ties in with what's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody seems to be looking at Unsolved Mysteries, and I think that was our initial hook. We have this footage, and the reason why it was shot was to make everybody feel like this was to bring a little bit more reality to it. It was good to find a space for it.
Definitely. And I really love kind of some of the subtle shot touches in this shooting. And I think this is probably some combination of both of your questions. There's, if they have an argument, I really liked how it would kind of do quick cuts to each person when they were fighting. And then, when they kind of sort of were slowly resolving it, it would kind of show both of them. It's just like very small touches that kind of move the story along and let you get the emotion without, you know, them needing to say anything more. You know, what was, were there all sorts, I guess, how was it to film something that is so claustrophobic, but that, you know, they go through kind of this very large kind of story arc within this small car?
Well, you know, Seamus, the DP, and myself, we sat, you know, and did a lot of specific kind of shot listing, and trying to kind of make sure the camera didn't repeat itself too many times. And that when, you know, we're going to utilize the car as much as possible to, you know, explore the whole space, as, you know, I would think I would do if I was stuck in a car. I would just keep trying to like find another place to be comfortable, but also use them as moments. So like there's moments where like if they're not together as a couple, then like there's a division between them, be it the seats, like one's in the back seat, one's in the front. They're not looking at each other, you know, to make little hints of like, okay, they're not together. Okay, now they're together. Like they're in the same shots this way, but something's between them. Like they're in the same, you know, they're in an argument, so they're completely isolated and they're completely looking at each other. Or, you know, there's a great shot I love when they're sitting in the back, when they're both sitting in the, one sitting in the front, one sitting in the back seat, and they're looking at each other through like the seatbelt area. And you kind of don't know where they're looking at each other, but they're just kind of, it's almost like the person on the other side is completely obscured. Like, I don't know who this person is anymore. And it was just those little things that we were hoping people would pick up on. And then, of course, you know, Bradley took it to, you know, trying to carve out the pace so that all works and, you know, plays together and that you feel it. I mean, do you have more to that, Bradley would say?
Well, I think you also tapped into a huge part of the story, David, and it was one of Brendan's, I think, big contributions as a writer on the script. Because when I first read the script, my initial reaction, I loved it. I read it at 1 a.m. on my phone in bed because Brendan found it and he passed it to me. And it was one of those page turners. You had to, you know, this movie is one of those things where love it or hate it, you got to see how it ends, you know, because you've invested the time, right?
Yep.
So Brendan, you know, the thing that I loved about it, because I was newly married, Brendan, you know, it was a good metaphor for marriage. You know, the conundrum of being in a car in this situation. Do you stay or do you go? It's a debate when you watch this movie. And if you dig into survival experts, there is science behind that. Most people say you should stay because if you go, you're dead. And the couple has the debate. And we always found that that was a metaphor for marriage. You know, when times get rough, do you leave or do you stay? And that's a question that's different for every human being. And so really what Brendan did when he added his pen to the page was, and how we developed it in pre-production or development rather, is how can we incorporate more of their marriage and more of that layer into the story? Because how can we bring this beyond just the survival thing and occupy more time in this car and more conflict and allow the tension to percolate beyond the obvious nemesis, which is Mother Nature, right? Mm-hmm. And so all of these fights, that evolution, and this young couple who didn't know each other well, they had secrets. And we tried to write in some common secrets that, you know, couples of this era, of this generation experience, like medication during pregnancy, you know, simple things that aren't necessarily the biggest, most dramatic thing you've ever seen, but just, you know, the normal circumstances that everyday couples experience. Because this movie and Brendan's vision, where he steered us all along the way, was these are not experts of anything. These are normal people, just like anyone out there who got in a really bad situation, and are they going to get out of it? Or are they not going to get out of it? And so let's give them normal problems. So that's very much a big part of this movie, and I'm glad you noticed that, David.
Yeah, the fights felt very kind of natural, what you would have happen if you were stuck in a car with someone, even if you knew them pretty well. You know, after however many days, it it is, you know, you start to kind of wear on each other's nerves, I imagine. So I think that was a good choice, not having them like, oh, I killed someone 5 years ago. Although maybe they did that. I don't know. You have to watch the movie to find out. But I think it felt, I think it did feel like a very unnatural situation, but natural relationship in an unnatural situation.
Yeah, that water bottle scene has always been one of our favorites. I think it's been a company favorite of the film because it's very relatable on all levels.
Yes.
Whether you're stuck in a car or not.
And so, you know, I guess there were a lot of fairly brutal, not like brutal violent, but just like brutal survival type scenes. You know, people can watch the movie, but they go to some extremes to survive, as you would expect. You know, I guess, are there additional scenes that were cut that might make it into like a special features, or were there just some things that you filmed that were just like, oh, we can't put that in, that's too real, or something like that?
No, we never cut anything that was too real.
There's one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there? Yeah, the thing that I keep saying I wish we
But it's kind of a spoiler. So
yeah, we can't talk about it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
There's one scene that was cut that was the question of like time passage, like how do you get through your days?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And there was kind of a subplot of this dictionary that Naomi brought with her because she's a writer. And so she had a Norwegian dictionary, like English to Norwegian dictionary that kind of played through. And there's one, I think is it the only scene we cut, Brendan, ultimately? I think it's the only scene we cut.
I think we cut half of it off. The scene's still in there, but we basically cut the back half of it off where they start learning Norwegian to pass the time.
Yeah. That might be in a DVD extra if you buy the DVD.
Yeah,
people make DVDs anymore.
Buy the DVD, you get a 3 months, you know, subscription to Duolingo, or I don't know, whatever the Babelfish, whatever the newest language app is.
There you go.
So I guess, you know, wrapping up the main portion, you know, what's next for you all, other than maybe a nice vacation? Well, I would say a nice vacation to a tropical place, but no one can go anywhere right now. So what all is next for you?
I'm trying to get another film off the ground with Edie Falco. Hopefully we can get going late fall or, you know, early next year. But that's my main focus right now.
Yes, and to augment that operative word, comedy.
Yeah, it's true. It's a total comedy. Departure.
I think you've earned that.
Yeah. That's our vacation. Yeah. A little bit of laughter.
It's a comedy it's a pacey comedy too. We're like, okay, yeah, this has like pace. Like, 'cause one of our first arguments in the beginning was like, you know, I intentionally made the movie like slow. It's like a very slow burn. And it was just something that Bradley and I always had to kind of go back and forth on, like, you know, do we make it fast? Do we make it like, how is this too slow? Like, is this like, you know, are you waiting too long for something to happen? But it was a delicate little ballet.
You definitely feel their ordeal, which is, I think, pretty sure what you were going for.
Exactly.
All right. So now, go ahead.
Yeah, I also think just generally, you know, the independent film world has been so on life support for such a long time. Pre-pandemic, something that's been very interesting about the pandemic is, you know, out of crisis comes change. I think that classic expression. Mm-hmm. And with Centigrade, I think we've learned a lot through the marketing strategy of this movie and through investment models. And I really look forward to kind of continuing on this journey of bucking, if you will, conventional wisdom and kind of feeling this surgence of open-mindedness to do things a little bit differently, you know, because we all know now to shoot movies we have to do it differently for health and safety, but also when it comes to distribution, going directly to VOD, simultaneously releasing things, even the drive-in thing. I mean, it was really amazing to premiere our film at a drive-in, and we highly recommend it. You know, if you want to see this movie, it's at a bunch of drive-ins still. It's a great way to experience the film. This is a movie that really is intense on a big screen, and especially when you're in a car watching a movie trapped in a car. But with, you know, the unsolved mysteries thing, with all these things as a producer, there's so many new avenues to get your film out there. So it's the future, I think, is very bright for the independent filmmaker. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah,
the drive-in thing seems very kind of randomly fortuitous, right? It is kind of the perfect way to see this film. So
yeah,
potentially just turn your AC all the way up.
Oh yeah.
And,
I always said when we were shooting a year or two ago, I was like, the perfect premiere for this is a drive-in theater. And like 10 minutes into the movie, special effects guys make it snow. Like that would be the premiere. But
so we can blame you for this whole thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So be careful what you wish for, because you got it. All right, so now I'd like to just move into, I call it the lightning round. It's just lightweight questions that are tangentially related to the film or the characters, and you can choose to answer as much or as little as you want, although I've tried to make them very answerable questions. So the first question is for both of you. What is your ideal snow vacation?
None.
Aspen.
Aspen, yeah, I was gonna say something like that.
Something warm and largely built up.
Yeah.
So now when you go on vacation, what size car do you get? Do you just get as big as you can, just the RV that has the bathroom and the supplies in it, or?
I get a big car. I always get a big car. That was actually the car I owned at that time.
Oh,
I assume it's a winter vacation?
Yeah, we'll go with winter. Yeah.
Volvo XC90.
It's a good car.
That's what we got in Norway. Don't laugh at me.
How many supplies can you store in that thing? Because I think that would be my consideration going forward. Just how much water, how much food.
Yeah.
Have you ever been stranded in your car?
I have for a night on the side of a road.
Well, the next question was going to be, was it overnight? So there you go. All right.
Yeah.
How long do you think you could survive trapped in your car? And maybe this is an easy question for you all, since you did all the research on the most extreme survival stories. So.
Probably 5 days. Probably only 5 days.
I think I could survive, but I think people around me would probably rather die.
It's a good, well, maybe one would get the other. You never know. If you were trapped in the car, would you want to be trapped with someone or by yourself?
That's a good question. It depends on who that person is.
Be careful who you answer.
Yeah, exactly. I guess with somebody.
All right.
With a friend.
And preferably a friend that maybe doesn't eat that much. But
yeah, exactly.
Have you ever been buried in the snow?
No.
When I was a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so this is, I kept thinking of this while I was watching the movie. Have you ever seen the Simpsons Cabin Fever episode?
Is
when
that
they go
where
on the work retreat and they get stuck in the cabin?
And then what's his name? Sideshow Bob shows up?
Nope. No.
Oh no. Then no, I don't remember.
Okay.
I probably do. I know a lot of Simpsons. I just don't remember.
It's from the good era, so it's
Yeah.
It's definitely a watchable one. Bradley, have you seen it?
I don't recall.
Okay. Well, once you should see it, because I was thinking about that the entire time. Essentially, the story is Homer and someone else get trapped in a cabin that gets buried under snow, and they kind of go through, the different levels of survival and madness to a more comedic effect that I saw in this.
Yeah, but they do it in like one day, right? Like they go through all those steps, and it's only been like 24 hours.
Yeah, I think that's probably the case.
Yeah.
But they do have a transformation, so
yeah.
All right, well, that's everything from me. Thank you so much for joining me. The movie is Centigrade. It's in theaters at the drive-in, so make sure to check that out. Experience this movie in this current climate. It's kind of the perfect way to see it. Or if you don't want to head out, you can watch it on digital or on demand. And thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thank you, David. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
We'll see you on the next one.
Yep, that sounds good. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to something, funnier, lighter, and warmer next time around.
You and me both.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. That was Brendan Walsh and Bradley J. Ross from Centigrade, the all-new ice-cold thriller from IFC Midnight. It's available on demand in VOD and in drive-in theaters now, so check it out if you want to. Just make sure to bring lots of water, food, and other provisions, just in case. If you liked this interview, please feel free to like and subscribe to this channel. It helps us out a lot and make sure that all of our new videos go directly to you. And as always, please go to watcherpass.com for all your movie interviews, reviews, and recommendations. Thank you so much.